We don't love to find someone perfect. We love to learn how to see ourselves in the shattered reflections of another. Carl Jung. You loved an avoidant. You loved them with patience, with care that felt limitless. You forgave the distance. You justified the silence. You swallowed your own needs just to keep them from pulling away. And then one day, they left, effortlessly, without looking back. You sat there, holding an invisible wound, wondering, do they ever regret it? Do they ever think of me? Do they ever feel guilty for disappearing from my life like I didn't matter? Avoidants rarely say sorry out loud. They won't send a 2 a.m. text confessing their mistakes. But here's what you need to know. Their guilt is not triggered by your tears. It's awakened by your quiet transformation. When you grow in silence without spite, without revenge, you become the mirror they can no longer bear to look into. This video will take you on the yellow brick road 5 psychological stops where avoidants face the parts of themselves they tried to outrun, not so you can win them back, but so you can finally reclaim yourself. Avoidantly attached individuals, when a relationship begins to deepen and become emotionally intense, often panic at the thought of closeness, as if their hearts instinctively shudder at an unfamiliar breeze. They don't intentionally evade you. Rather, an inner defense mechanism whispers, if I let them in, I will lose my freedom. I will be swept away in a boundless sea of emotions. So they withdraw, go silent, avoid deep conversations, hesitate to reply to messages, and sometimes vanish without explanation. Yet what they never realize is that the bundle of restlessness and chaos inside them, thought to surface only when they are with you, actually follows them everywhere. They bet that distancing themselves from you will free them from this burden, but the weight is not tied to a setting or a person. It is tied to themselves. It is their insecurity, their helplessness in the face of their own feelings. They carry it like non-abandonable luggage, unwittingly burying every hope of the freedom they once dreamed of. During the time they believe they are escaping, that same turmoil remains intact, merely subdued, waiting for a new challenge to erupt. The moment they realize the restlessness does not vanish despite taking a break from the game, that is when a different sensation seeps in: guilt. Guilt does not arise from pleas, nor does it spring from mourning or reproaches. It appears when you, whom they once deemed the source of all discomfort, embark on a completely different journey. When you choose steadfast silence, without clinging, without begging, without anger, and instead devote time to yourself, facing your pain, healing your wounds, and igniting self-love, you are walking on the yellow brick road that leads them into an inescapable black hole of emotions. This path is not a formula for revenge nor a manipulation tactic. It is an expression of inner strength, of healthy boundaries, and of self-worth, strong enough not to rely on anyone else. When you become a radiant sunset strip across their life's dark sky, they dare not look back for fear of confronting themselves, the version that was once fragile and panicked, now stunned by the power you have discovered. That is precisely when the yellow brick road fulfills its mission, turning each step you take into shattered mirror fragments they cannot turn away from, each shard reflecting the wounds they inflicted upon themselves. They carry the fear of losing freedom, but do not realize true freedom lies in the ability to embrace all their emotions, even their pain, instead of burying them. And when you move forward in quiet determination, you not only kindle the flame of freedom within yourself, but also cast light for that avoidant person, light that forces them to face their own ego, compelling them to feel guilt pounding like a heartbeat, unavoidable, unspoken. And that's when we arrive at the heart of the story, the yellow brick road guiding the avoidant partner through 5 stops, 5 psychological maneuvers that gradually awaken their deepest guilt. Imagine walking beside them on this path, each stop a challenge, forcing them to face themselves until there's no turning back. Stop 1. Hedonic treadmill. They left you for what seemed to be a perfectly reasonable reason. They needed to reclaim comfort, needed personal space to breathe, and live according to their independent nature. They believed individual freedom would solve every tension and pressure, that leaving the relationship would free them from feeling constrained. But what they failed to understand is that the root of their discomfort didn't come from you at all, but from within themselves, a pervasive inner anxiety, a mental noise that follows them wherever they go. In the early days apart, they could relish the feeling of letting go, no one controlling them, no one making demands. Each morning they woke convinced they had triumphed over emotional ties, free like a bird soaring through an open sky. Briefly, They smiled at what felt like eternal freedom. No messages to reply to, no longing eyes waiting for a sweet goodnight, no midnight calls revealing sudden sorrow. Yet after a short time, that freedom turned hollow and meaningless, even more lonely than any moment spent with you. They looked out the window but saw no peace. They scrolled social media but found no satisfaction. They met friends yet still heard the echo of their own restlessness. They realized everything around them remained unchanged, only one thing was different. You were no longer by their side. But deep down, they still carried that bundle of restlessness, that chaotic impulse. Now it was no longer a reaction to you, but a reaction to themselves. They thought changing circumstances, leaving the relationship, would shed their inner darkness, only to discover the harsh truth. Insecurity is an invisible part of their soul, a burden that cannot be discarded anywhere along the road they travel. That was the first moment they began to hear the stirrings of guilt, realizing they had traded a warm connection, a psychological anchor, only to face the invisible void they themselves carried. This guilt didn't manifest as shouting or tears, but smoldered within like a warning bell, echoing whenever they felt lonely, whenever a memento appeared or a familiar song played, bringing your image to mind. Once the restlessness from the hedonic treadmill had fully rattled them, their mind began to seek more visible signs of change. They wanted proof that independence wasn't an empty promise, but something measurable. They asked themselves and the world, have I really improved? Am I better off without you? That's when they became aware of the version of you waiting on the other side of the divide, and that contrast quietly took hold of their thoughts. And so we arrive at stop 2, where the power of comparison is unleashed in full force. And then, as you walk that glittering path of guilt, we arrive at stop 2, the before and after effect, where the human instinct to compare is unleashed more powerfully than ever. From the days apart, they've been monitoring every small shift in your life through stories, statuses, and captions on social media. One day, they see you post a sunrise photo at a cafe window, your smile radiant and completely different from the sadness they last witnessed. On another, you share a gym update, your physique firmer, your eyes shining with confidence, like summer light banishing the clouds. Then there's the caption, "Life waits for no one. Turn your wounds into strength." 30 characters, but laden with meaning. Each of these moments isn't just an image or a phrase. You are living proof of the growth they once refused. Psychology tells us that when people judge value, they don't use an absolute scale, they compare to what came before. You, in your new version, become the after standard that shifts every before measurement. They once believed they'd be happier free from you, but now they see you happy, strong, evolving without them, and it strikes directly at an avoidance, pride, and self-esteem. Their mind goes into overdrive. What if I hadn't walked away? If I'd stayed, would we be different now? Could things still be good if I had been patient? Why is he thriving without me? This is counterfactual thinking, conjuring endless parallel scenarios for comparison. Each what if they pose adds another seed of guilt to their soul's garden, a seed that will sprout, wrap around their heart, draining their energy and robbing them of sleep. They dream of you. They wake to the echo of your smile. They search memories of long nights holding you, convinced they were lucky only for a wave of regret to crash over them stronger than any prior restlessness. Ironically, you aren't doing anything deliberate. You're simply living, growing, shining, and that very light ignites their guilt. Their guilt isn't the "I've done something vile" kind, nor "I was totally wrong," but a realization, I let go of a possible future, a partner with great potential, only to watch that future pass me by. They recognize the flaw wasn't yours but theirs, a lack of patience, courage to face emotions, and faith in commitment. Every before and after snapshot of you reminds them, you don't need them to move forward. You thrive, you're happy, so what about them? Placing past and present side by side exposes the price of walking away from you. This truth is so powerful, it halts them on the yellow brick road. They mull over days gone by, that moment they let go, the ache they felt seeing your radiant posts. They revisit the unanswered messages, the missed calls, the silences that hurt you. Every detail becomes evidence, dismantling their self-justification. I left for comfort, for freedom. Because as long as you keep evolving, keep living well, their choice isn't freedom, but imprisonment in remorse. They can't dismiss, "If I'd stayed, we might have grown together." And then, after sowing countless what-if seeds, after past and present images merge in their mind like broken wings, they finally realize all they must do is turn back, return to the road they abandoned. But do they have the courage? In that moment, they've completed stop 1 on the yellow brick road, faced the pressure of past versus present comparisons, and are just one step away from stop 3, where their self-image, forged in the mirror you once held, begins to shatter. And when they've weathered the storm of before and after comparisons, the next phase plunges them deeper into the labyrinth of guilt. Stop 3, the looking glass self-shift. Charles Horton Cooley's concept of the looking glass self teaches us that our identity isn't forged in a vacuum, but grows through how others treat us, perceive us, and reflect us back to ourselves. In your relationship, you were that singular mirror in which they saw their finest qualities: strength, compassion, self-confidence, and the capacity for unconditional love. When you praised their virtues sincerely, comforted them in moments of weakness, and trusted them with your unfulfilled dreams, you awakened in them an image of themselves as noble and worthy of love. Those weren't empty words, but a light shining into their psyche, engraving the belief that they deserved happiness. Then, one day, you chose silence, no more effusive encouragement, no admiring gazes, not even enthusiastic interaction, and that mirror went dark. In that moment, they found themselves adrift. Desperate, they searched for another mirror to reflect their best self. But every glance returned only a distorted silhouette, insecure, confused, and fragile. With no one left to believe in them unconditionally, they felt trapped in boundless void, without solid ground beneath their feet. At that point, they dared to look into themselves and realized the proud, steadfast self was gone, replaced by a cracked, vulnerable shadow. The image of someone strong, loving, and brave once upheld in your eyes was reduced to ash. And it was the loss of that protective mirror, that nurturer of their ego, that delivered the sharpest sting of guilt at stop 3. A painful voice whispered in their mind, "I lost the chance to help them see the best in me." This guilt differs from the regret of accidentally hurting someone. It cuts deeper, born of awareness, an awareness of the absence of the unwavering faith you once gave. Every memory of your admiring gaze, every hand you held through hardship, every word of reassurance became a blade slicing their heart. This guilt is not washed away by apologies. It's a psychological wound that leaves them disoriented. Ironically, as that mirror shattered, they attempted to flee the guilt by weaving self-justifications. They told themselves, "I only did what was best for me. I needed independence to grow. I'm not a bad person. I didn't harm anyone." These rationalizations mark the beginning of stop 4. The clean hands fallacy, the illusion of pure hands, they erect to protect their destabilized ego. But at this juncture, when their protective mirror is gone, and they're wrestling with profound guilt, no amount of excuse feels sufficient. They recognize that no justification can mask the wound in their soul. Each reason they give only deepens their emptiness, because it unveils the truth. In losing you, they also lost the light that sustained their self-image. Having reached the climax of guilt at stop 3, they understand that they can no longer dwell behind the fallacy of pure hands. They can't deny that they broke your trust, abandoned your partnership, and left you to walk alone. When this realization rings out louder than any words, when they see you continuing your life without them, they feel the undeniable call to return to the yellow brick road, confront their guilt, and begin mending their shattered self. In doing so, they will learn that there are no clean hands outside of the sincere admission of wrongdoing, and a true desire to make amends for what was lost. And then, when the reflecting mirror has shattered, and every comparison past versus present can no longer mask the inner void, we arrive at stop 4, the clean hands fallacy. Just as many after wartime construct the myth, "I didn't commit the atrocities, so I bear no stain," avoidantly attached individuals console themselves with the story, "I merely left. I did nothing cruel. I didn't betray or hurt anyone." They erect an image of pure hands in the minds of others and themselves, believing that as long as they don't lash out, create a scene, or broadcast painful details, they remain blameless. Yet, when you choose respectful silence instead of pleading, maintain healthy boundaries instead of generating drama, and refrain from posting angry exposés, they suddenly lose their final escape hatch. There are no accusations left to cast at you, and no audience left to hear their excuses. For the first time, their heart finds no hiding place. They left you alone with your silent pain, but now that guilt cannot be offloaded onto anyone else. They must face one stark truth. I didn't just abandon the one I loved. I willfully preserved my innocent image, at the expense of every shared feeling, every responsibility, and every promise I ever made. As the mask of rationalization crumbles, guilt surges forth not merely as an echo in the mind, but as an unquenchable display, illuminating every dark corner, etching itself into each thought, each memory of the times they stayed silent when you needed to speak, each moment they walked away without looking back. Trapped in this web of remorse, they revisit the chapters you once traversed hand in hand, and wonder how they could have been so callous. Your silence becomes the most unbearable indictment. By not screaming, not pleading, not confronting them, you demonstrate that your boundaries are unbreakable, that you need neither their excuses nor apologies to heal and move forward. A single serene glance, a calm smile, or a gentle, "I wish you well," is enough to show them that you value yourself and your new life more than anything they could ever offer. They find themselves questioning whether any plea or action could earn your forgiveness now, other than the sincere admission of wrongdoing and the willingness to take responsibility. But the clean hands fallacy, the false belief that simply avoiding wrongdoing keeps one guilt-free, crumbles away when every justification dissolves. Guilt, after all, does not reside in overt actions or harsh words, but in the fact that they walked away, refused to share the pain, and ignored your emotions. When this realization awakens, they understand that they not only face the emptiness of their own choices, but must answer to their own heart, and that is the heaviest burden of all. Yet this journey does not end here, for just when it seems guilt has peaked, they will attempt to bury it even deeper, and that leads them to the final stop. Stop 5, the ostrich effect, where every attempt at avoidance utterly fails, forcing them to confront their own heart one last time. And so, after each previous stop peeled back another layer of shame, we arrive at stop 5, the ostrich effect. The ostrich effect describes burying one's head in the sand to avoid danger, and for an avoidantly attached person, that sand is anything connected to you, your social feed, the cafe where you once shared a latte, even conversations that casually mention your name. They believe that if they simply don't look, don't listen, and don't engage, all uncomfortable feelings will quietly dissipate. They behave like an iceberg, with the majority submerged unseen, leaving only a smooth, silent surface. At first, this tactic seems to work. They unfollow you on every platform, mute or block mutual friends, delete shared photos, and avoid the streets you strolled together. Whenever someone brings you up, they quickly change the subject, feigning ignorance. In those moments, they feel a lightness, as though their mind has stilled. But stillness is not peace. In that silence, emotions go unexpressed. On the contrary, they build up, like compressed gas in a pressure cooker. Then, inevitably, the fuse is lit. Maybe it's an old song playing on the radio during their commute. Maybe a forgotten photograph flashes across their newsfeed. Perhaps they stumble upon a souvenir tucked away in their closet, or someone mentions your name in passing. Any one of these triggers awakens the buried feelings. At that instant, they hear the pounding of their own heartbeats, an undeniable thrum echoing in their skull. This is no ordinary restlessness. It's the relentless drum of guilt. I tried to flee my feelings, but they came back stronger than ever. 9. Just like in Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart, where the narrator convinces himself he has hidden his crime forever beneath the floorboards, only to be tormented by the imagined heartbeat of his victim, the avoidant cannot escape that echo. No matter how long they bury their heads in the sand, when that sand is part of their own psyche, every attempt at avoidance proves futile. Instead of silence, they hear more clearly the pulse of their conscience, a haunting refrain on repeat. Thus, the yellow brick road has led them from the illusion of comfort, through brutal comparisons, the loss of their protective mirror, the shattering of their innocent hands, and finally, to a point where escape is impossible. Each stop is more than dry psychological theory. It is a fragment of a love story where guilt is awakened, not by your demands, but by your quiet growth and self-respect. When you walk on, you do not shout, you do not plead, you simply live your truth. And that very truth compels them to halt, to turn around, and to face the person they once cast aside. After each stop on the yellow brick road has stirred the deepest layers of guilt, the avoidant may never admit it out loud. They won't say, "I'm sorry," or "I miss you." Yet in the silence, they remember. They hesitate. They may pretend to ignore you, but deep down, they know. What haunts them most is not your tears or pleading messages. It's your silence, a silence heavy with meaning, reflected in your calm actions and unwavering smiles. It's when you live differently, no longer dependent, no longer on tiptoes waiting, and no longer small in their eyes. And here's the closing line of this video. When you become a better version of yourself, you don't need to confront them to make them feel guilty. They will face it on their own. Begin your own ascension journey today. Let them hear that heartbeat not through pleas, but through your steadfast silence and the image of you thriving without them.